Hello everyone, welcome back. Now we are talking about the Servant of Arakaali. Now, unlike other ascendancies that we've covered, the Servant of Arakaali really doesn't have a lot of different archetypes present in it. It's just you kind of pick how you want to play your singular archetype. What I mean by this is almost all of the skills only synergize well with minions. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There is like potentially one way to play this without minions, but mostly it seems like this is very much going to be a minion ascendancy. Another thing worth noting is that it is not a witch archetype, which means it will be played on the shadow. And so you'll be starting on the shadow side of the tree. It might be a little bit harder to reach minion nodes, but you can still reach them. But just keep in mind you won't be able to Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame things from the Necromancer. That being said, there's more than enough power, I believe, on this tree to give you a comfortable league start, and I'll explain a little bit what I mean by that. So, first of all, what's strong about the Ascendancy in general? A few things stand out. First of all, we have the trigger level 20 race spiders on kill. Let me make the brush pixel size bigger. So we have this, and what this essentially does is it gives us the Arakaali's Fang unique ability for raised spiders for free. If you're not aware, it's generally an extremely strong unique. It's considered build defining. It's generally on the expensive side. It depends a little bit on how popular minions are. And you're going to get the level 20 version of that skill. Normally you just get the level 1 version for free. So already, this could potentially carry your single target. One big downside is that we do not have the ability to put support gems in skills granted by the Ascendancy. So that means you're not going to get increased area of effect support on your spiders. So you will need some sort of minion to do AoE damage for you if you decide to go this build. So since we're triggering spiders on kill, there's two ways we could generate these spiders in a boss fight situation. One is we could use Penance Mark, and what Penance Mark does is it puts a mark on the enemy that spawns these little phantoms near them, and these phantoms are hostile towards you and count as enemies, even though they don't do much damage. So if you kill those, you'll raise spiders. So that's an option. But otherwise, you could just simply use a worm flask, and a lot of people consider, a flask slot to be less of a cost than an entire ascendancy. So I'd probably recommend using the worm flask. So we trigger level 20 raised spiders on kill. Skin crawlers would probably go in the same archetype here, where minions have 50% chance to inflict enemies with poison on hit and 10% chance to inflict wither. Now, poison is extremely strong on minions. You can get lots of individual hits. They stack out the boss very quickly, and perhaps most importantly, kills from poisoned enemies count as your kills instead of being your minions' kills. This will automatically proc raise spiders. So theoretically, once you get the spiders on the field, as long as they keep being able to kill enemies, they can keep summoning more spiders. So you don't have to constantly worry about pressing your worm flask. So that's another benefit of going to poison archetype. And then lastly, we have neurotoxin, and this is going to give you crit multi for every wither debuff applied on the enemy. And minions base attack critical strike chance is equal to the critical strike chance of your main hand weapon. Now, there's two things you can do here. You can either A, wield something like a spell dagger, and you can just try to cap out the crit on that dagger by using increased crit chance mods, or you could equip a two-handed hammer, I think it's called Trifon, that will set your main hand critical strike chance to 100%. So if you want to sacrifice your main hand weapon to get 100% chance of critically striking for all of your minions, you can do that. And in addition, they'll automatically be applying the wither debuff for you already. So normally minions are a very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're a very button-intensive playstyle. If you go these 4 nodes, you have at least some of your minions that are going to be self-sustaining. You worry about them one time, they get on the field, and you never have to think about them again. You don't have to pop a ton of buffs for them. If I remember correctly, the spiders are immortal, so you don't even need to worry about your standard sacrifices that you might have to do to keep them alive, which is super nice. However, you have some other options that you can use to replace Penance Mark or potentially even Neurotoxin. One is Silk Dancer. This is the only defensive node on Thread Spinner is the only defensive node on the Ascendancy, and it really synergizes with Silk Dancer. And what this does is it gives you the aspect of Spider skill. This is still going to cost 25% reservation. And what that's going to do is it's going to slow all enemies around you. And then if you have Silk Dancer, it's also going to cause them to deal reduced damage and have reduced all resistance. So that includes chaos. So potentially you could start with Thread Spinner on League Start and grab Silk Dancer and forego 2 nodes over here. And then you can drop Thread Spinner when you can get aspect of the spider on your gear somewhere. So you don't necessarily have to have Thread Spinner to take advantage of Silk Dancer, because 15% damage reduction might be very nice for a build like this, because you're going to miss out on very standard shadow defenses. Like Trickster is an amazing defensive ascendancy, but we don't have any of Trickster's nodes here. We're starting Shadow, and we don't have any defensive nodes if we don't go Silk Dancer. So that might be something worth considering. Another very important thing worth considering is at League Start, you pretty much always want to grab this node. That is because Envy is going to add flat chaos damage to everything it affects. And since you can pick this up from your first lab, a level 15 aura will completely carry your damage while leveling. So even if you unspec this, by the time you get to your 3rd lap, like you might spend gold to just delete this ascendancy right after you grab your 3rd lab and just forget about it and only use it for leveling. That's completely fine, but it doesn't change the fact it's super good for leveling. Pass leveling, I'm trying to think if there's a situation I would use this. It's a node you would pick if you were trying to avoid minions on this archetype, but as I was saying earlier, I really don't think there's a reason to avoid playing minions on this archetype. I really feel like if you don't want to play minions, just play a different archetype. I don't see enough really power here to justify that. And then we have our last node, which is Fatal Bite, which is gain 30% of physical as extra chaos while at max power charges, and 20% chance to gain power charges on hitting an enemy affected by spiderweb. So whoever made this was kind of hoping that you would lean into this archetype. So I guess if you really want to think about it, there's really 2 archetypes here. There's leaning into the left side of the tree and leaning into the right side of the tree. But in my opinion, the left side of the tree is looking pretty weak here compared to the right side. So you consider dropping maybe 1 node on the right side, then you pick something from the left side. And the reason I say 30% of physical as extra chaos is weak is because we already have that on uniques. We have these lovely uniques called Ming's Heart. Ming's Heart will give you physical damage as extra chaos damage without a conditional. The only conditional is it reduces your life by a certain amount. But you can also scale that extra chaos damage you get with Catalyst. And generally, I would say a ring slot is less valuable than an ascendancy point. So it might be something you could consider doing early. Maybe you go Feral Bite plus Malevolent Shards early, and then you respec into something else. That's an option you can do, but I would be surprised if this made it into anyone's effective end-game builds. Last thing I'll mention about playing minions with this is that since we don't have increased AoE support on Broodguard, many people are considering running the is it called Fang of Arakaali, I think, or what is it? Fang, yeah, Arakaali's Fang. There we go. That's what it's called. Here we go. So some people are considering running this unique dagger in addition to the Ascendancy. So you'll have essentially 2 sets of spiders. You'll still hit the maximum limit of summoned phantoms of 20 though. But these ones can essentially have area of effect on them. And that potentially allows us to have a multi-target option. So you could be a pure spider build without having to worry about some sort of minion to augment your area of effect. So that's worth mentioning. I think that really covers all the really kind of the what you're building with this ascendancy. It's very straightforward, very on theme, very interesting. I might play this one. I don't normally play minions though, so probably not. But it's definitely something that if I did play minions, I'd be looking at it. I think they did a good job cooking with it. It's thematically very cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other ascendancies they will offer in the future.